Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and recently I sculpted a Tanith camo cloak. And I had the great idea to use a little mini mould to help me out. And I had the terrible idea of using a toothpick as a sculpting tool. Now, thanks to a donation to the channel, I have acquired myself the cheapest, nastiest silicone shaping tools that can be used with milliput. But I still have my little mould, so let's have a look at the model I'll be working with today.
So here we go, this is the model I'll be using today, and we have a flamer specifically, and there's a good reason why I want to mould a cloak onto a model with a flamer, and that is because of the tanks on the back, fuel tank and compressed air tank. Because most of the better options that I've seen have the cloak included as part of the torso, which means you can't put the tanks on the back of the torso because there's a cloak in the way. In the same way, the separate cloak pieces, you can't really put them on the back of the tanks or on the torso and then the tanks on top. It all doesn't really fit. Which means, for the most part, if you want to make a Flame Trooper Tanith with the cloak, this is the one that you're going to have to learn how to sculpt. And so, with my old mould here and my brand new shaping tools, let's give it a go. Now you'll notice that I haven't got head fitted, and that is deliberate because I'll be sculpting all around this area. But just to make sure that I can actually get in to sculpt this and press it down as best I can, I've found that cutting off the back of the collar, and I can angle it like this to prove that I'm not cutting towards myself. So that'll give me some space to work under here to actually press the milliput in. But also, I might want to just shave down the shoulder pad for exactly the same reason, because that can be a little bulky when it's got the milliput over the top. And there's some mould lines on it as well. So my plan for the cloak here is to use my old mould, but to, instead of having it draped directly backwards, I actually want to have it draped sideways over this arm. Interestingly, I'm going to be able to put the cloak over the chest and in between his back and the tanks, but I actually want to run it underneath the sling for the flamer. So I think I've prepared as much as I can. I've put it off as much as I really should. I should probably grab the milliput and let's get started. Once I had the milliput mixed, I pressed it into my mould as I had done previously to get the basic shape. I went back a couple of times just trying to make the shape just right and not have too much material over the chest. Once fitted, I started pressing into it with the sculpting tool and found that it was very much not quite what I was expecting, but also very much so. The firmness of the silicone matters in this situation, as it varies how much pressure you can apply in any given place. But before I had any real time to experiment, I found that the milliput was cracking over the arm. It's no real issue here, as I'm well within the working time of the epoxy. I can just grab a bit of the excess material and press it into the crack, smushing it together, and the sculpting tool makes that very easy. With that covered, I set about trying to get a general shape for the cloak, ensuring that it would drape over his arm appropriately and cleaning some material off of the sling. As I scraped away some of the material, I felt like having a little bit of the cloak over the other shoulder. So rather than clearing it all away, I ran one of the tools up the sling to clear out some of it, and then shaped the remainder over the other pauldron. This area was very easy to work with, as I had the plastic model directly supporting the milliput. For the hanging cloak, that was not possible, and it was far more challenging. Without a hard surface to hold the milliput in place, anytime I tried to sculpt a feature, a fold, an edge, the entire piece would just collapse. I was able to get my finger underneath it a little bit, but at no point was I able to fully hold it in place. Also quickly becoming evident is some lack of support over the chest. My original plan of having the cloak drape over this area was well dead, and I struggled getting any of the tools in there to lift it back up. Sticking with it, I achieved what I could achieve. I did manage to go over a lot of the surfaces and smooth them out. Using different shapes of tool, particularly with a little bit of water, made that very easy. There is somewhat of a texture forming here, but it's nowhere near as bad as my previous model. And certainly there is still room for improvement, but I am a leap ahead of the last one. Finally popping on one of Davik Design's beret heads, and it's done. Painting the model is all much of a muchness, my 22nd Ghost model at this point, so I knocked it out in a casual hour. I did some fun red for the tanks and blue for the hoses, which might be a little bit bright, but otherwise all of the painting here is stuff that I've done many times before, and I've shown you pretty much every one. Whilst striping in the camo pattern, I found extra folds or splits down the length of the cloak. Now I'm pretty sure I did not sculpt them in, so they might be from the mould, or they might be from when I was trying to support the side of the cloak. I wonder if I perhaps should use my newfound skills of sculpting and my better equipment to make a better master and a better mould. But then if I do that, I may end up in a cycle of making more moulds than cloaks. The fine texture that I had created was haunting me. It's almost like it's not even really there, just a fine grit of annoyance that you certainly can't see from arm's length. This model is going to be absolutely fine for line use, but as with most of my work, just not quite display quality.
So there we have another model complete, and it's definitely an improvement over my previous sculpting attempt. Still not great, and there's some definite problems with the edges. I wonder if it might be an idea to sculpt the draped part of the cloak separately off the model, get the edges and the kind of surface texture sorted out, and then put it onto the model. If I've got plastic behind it, it's easy to work with, but the hanging sections not so much. If anyone's got any suggestions, feel free to put them in the comments below. Yes, Shire Miniatures, I know, I can see you there typing away furiously. Of course, I will pin a comment from Shire Miniatures as soon as they post, because they, on their channel, are doing green stuff cloaks for the Tanith First and Only. And while green stuff and Milliput are sort of basically the same thing, there are some differences in the consistency and how they behave. But otherwise, this has been a fairly short video. Thank you all for coming along. Do like and subscribe if you want to see any more Gaunts Ghost stuff, because there's plenty more coming. I'm ED-SKaR, always will be, and I'll see you next time.